Allow me to introduce you to Devil's Tower, or what is referred to as a laccolith, which supposedly formed from a volcanic eruption at the dawn of Earth's creation, about 200 million years ago. At least, that's what Wikipedia tells us, and millions around the world believe that this is a mesa, or a laccolith, or a mountain. Really? Let's approach this so-called mountain and take a closer look at its fantastical columns that defy logical explanation, and then check Wikipedia again. Volcanic rocks are formed by the cooling and solidification of molten lava. What an intelligent volcanic eruption! It must have been standing perfectly in place until it hardened into these flawless hexagonal columns, towering 300 meters into the sky. They are so precise you could calibrate engineering instruments with these miraculous columns, as if they were extruded from a sugar icing injector, bundled at the top like a broom, and then dried quickly by a giant fan. Perhaps the columns of the Parthenon or St. Isaac's Cathedral were constructed in the same way. Dear scientists, have you lost your minds to write such nonsense? And people, have you lost yours to believe it? The claim that this engineering marvel was created by a fountain of molten lava is as absurd as saying that a racing car appeared on the track due to an explosion in a Ferrari factory. Have you ever seen what a lava fountain looks like? It seems that back in those days, lava had artificial intelligence. Upon comparative analysis, all the columns are hexagonal. Why specifically hexagonal? Because the masterpieces of the universe are built on this shape. Look, snowflakes are not completely identical, but they all form a perfect hexagon. Even without basic mathematical knowledge, they know that the hexagon is the most efficient shape for enclosing space. When bees construct a honeycomb, they instinctively create it to be spacious while conserving wax, for the hexagon is the most economically efficient shape for building a honeycomb. Even blind sheep could understand that our universe is constructed on decimal numbers. Therefore, it doesn't matter on what scale you study the idea, whether it be the scale of a mountain or the scale of a tree. Now, let's open a botany book and examine the structure of any plant to compare it with our giant trunk. We won't delve too deeply here. We are merely seeking the facts in the images of the trunks to make it futile to argue against them. Allow me to present to you a cross-section of a flax stem. Well, dear biologists, do you notice anything? No? Look closer, it appears as if there's a honeycomb in the center. Amazing, they are all hexagonal. What a coincidence. And if we strip away the outer layer of this flax, it will resemble our very own trunk. Now, let's take a look at the small rocks around it. Did you notice that the flax looks exactly like our trunk from a bird's eye view? They appear perfectly identical. The fibers of the trunk, much like those of flax, exhibit a hexagonal geometric shape along the entire length of the stem, extending to a staggering 384 meters. It is important to note that the fibers of the trunk demonstrate even greater precision in their proportions, as we have learned from botanical studies. The variation in length makes no difference, for these fibers are interconnected, resembling a branch of a hexagonal section after leaving the metal rolling mill. Moreover, the fibers are not adhered to one another, thus they fall away freely as the stone erodes. Additionally, each fiber of the trunk is covered by a thin membrane, akin to fascia, a delicate layer of fibrous tissue that surrounds muscles or other organs. As you can see, the outer petrified layer has crumbled over time due to moisture and wind, which serves as clear evidence that the trunk's fibers consist of at least two elements nested within each other. Furthermore, the fibers do not penetrate the ground vertically. Instead, they gradually bend to resemble the root system of any tree. So, as you can see, the official story about the sudden and accidental solidification of molten lava is nothing but sheer nonsense, and it quickly falls apart. I recall that in 1977, Hollywood produced a film titled Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in which Devil's Tower played the leading role. We were told countless times that this was a mountain where one could encounter extraterrestrial beings. But this absurdity is fit only for the gullible. Where were your eyes, esteemed scientists? Biologists, geologists, paleontologists, are you listening to me? Are you studying the world from behind a welder's mask? Now, let's determine the height of the trunk that was once a tree. We'll use the formula I mentioned earlier. The diameter of our trunk at the base is 300 meters, so if we multiply 300 by 20, we'll get the height. Are you ready? 6,000 meters. Think about that, it's simple, and everything we learn is through comparison. I believe we can place a significant mark here. Devil's Tower is the colossal stump of a gigantic silica tree, with all the characteristics of a natural trunk that we've all seen. But we must not underestimate the matrix that has corralled all the cattle into the stables. I am certain that even after all this clear evidence, there will still be people deeply asleep, demanding more proof. That's fine, but if you think these were all my arguments and evidence, allow me to disappoint you. I still have many trump cards up my sleeve, and I will relish every moment I lay them on the table. Well, we've understood everything about this trunk, and it's time to move on to the next one, isn't it? You may have thought this was a singular example. Just remove the blindfold from your eyes, and you will see many more. Let me introduce you to the Giant's Causeway in Ireland. Have you noticed something familiar? Look closely. Here they are again, hexagonal columns. If you haven't noticed the resemblance between them and Devil's Tower, then you are completely blind. It's the same gigantic trunk, but it didn't rise from the earth. This tree grew directly by the sea. The Giant's Causeway consists of approximately 40,000 of these geometric hexagonal columns, envied by every bee in the world. Naturally, the science enthusiasts declared this area a National Natural Reserve. As I mentioned earlier, the same person, under the pseudonym Wake Up, Human, said, "It is the height of irony to call Quarry Waste a national park." But what do Quarry Waste and this place have in common? I'll explain that later. For now, imagine what official science says about this Irish trunk. The Giant's Causeway is an area composed of about 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, the result of an ancient volcanic eruption. A volcanic eruption? Please, tell me how I can remain calm and not explode in a fountain of curses directed at this scientific community. This is extremely, extremely difficult. But I'll try to stay calm, simply because our enemies want us to be angry. I have just two questions. First, how many years did Sissy Campbell remain in a coma? Perhaps the researcher means Heather Campbell, the girl who was in an accident and was predicted by doctors to remain in a coma for 30 years, yet she awoke after just 2. Or maybe it refers to a character from a drama we don't know. The second question, why don't we say that a beehive is the result of an ancient volcanic eruption? There's absolutely no difference at all. We could also say that the pavement tiles in the street are the result of an ancient volcanic eruption. Show me just one difference, you science enthusiasts. Now, let's go back to our old method and compare the Giant's Causeway, but this time with real volcanic lava. I just want to remind you how volcanic lava flows and how it solidifies. Let us now compare Devil's Tower with the Giant's Causeway. Forgive me, I mean let's compare one silica trunk with another. I know there are still those who believe in the volcanic lava fountain, but if I didn't know about the giant silicon trees, I'd rather believe in a giant cream injector and fan than in this volcanic nonsense. And if you think these two giant trees are the only examples, you're mistaken. There are many more on Earth. The funniest part is that ordinary people don't realize these are cut trees, but official science recognized this seriously. So, they had to find a way to hide these trees from those who ask too many questions, and they came up with the brilliant name for these silicon trees: basalt cliffs. Notice these two pictures where fibers hang from the ceiling. How can the idea of a volcanic explosion explain that? The lava must have dripped, but some droplets didn't reach the ground. Instead, they adhered in their hexagonal form to other large droplets that somehow managed to reach the Earth. Look at this picture too. Just an ordinary picture of a girl. A beautiful picture, right? But the one thing the girl doesn't realize is that she's sitting next to the trunk of a silicon tree. All the evidence is out in the open for everyone to see, but the matrix perspective doesn't allow us to see 9 dolphins. There are plenty of images of silicon trunks on the internet. You can research this topic yourself. Google will help you. Let me introduce you to another hexagonal miracle of the Earth, also of silicon nature. It is the largest salt flat in the world, called Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. As you can see, not everything is as simple as written in textbooks or shown on the Discovery Channel. As usual, let's see what Wikipedia has to say about these hexagonal shapes. But wait, the fibers of silicon trunks mentioned on Wikipedia seem to have changed slightly when discussing the hexagonal structure of this South American lake, where nothing is mentioned at all. Complete silence, as if it doesn't exist. But it's there, definitely there. You might not believe it, but Wikipedia isn't the only source that remained silent. After hours of research, I found nothing about these complex hexagonal formations. Only in one place did I find a single phrase that said, "Look how interesting this dried and cracked salt is." I was stunned. First, under the bright sunlight, any surface cracks like this, but not in a hexagonal pattern like honeycombs. Second, cracks are depressions between surface fragments, but these are elevations, not depressions. They are the opposite of cracks. They resemble more the sheath on silicon trunk fibers. Third, why does the entire salt surface appear hexagonal? If the official story doesn't provide a logical explanation, allow me to offer my opinion. As Wake Up, Human says, there are no salt lakes, they are merely clay sediment reservoirs. I agree, but it's not exactly that. Here's why. I believe you've already realized that the hexagonal shape of honeycomb cells is a feature exclusively belonging to living organisms, whether it's a bee colony, a snowflake, or plant fibers. So, as we see with our own eyes, Salar de Uyuni is not just a gigantic layer of salt, but was once a living entity of silicon nature, scraped away by technocrats with their machines. Now you might understand how far removed we are from reality. If we can't even imagine a gigantic tree, how could we possibly imagine a creature made of salt spanning 10,000 kilometers in width? As for its height, it must have been unimaginably tall. Now you realize that 7,500 years ago, our Earth was so magnificent, astonishing, and beautiful that what James Cameron depicted in his film Avatar is merely a poor substitute for it. But all that remains for us now is a desert we've turned into a scrapyard. And I mean it was turned into scrap by their machines. In short, while our human society was asleep in the matrix, toiling away from 9 to 5 daily in useless jobs, dreaming useless dreams, our Earth was being literally stripped away by giant machines. I'll show you that later. Alright, the theoretical part is over, and the climax is near. We're close to the runway. But before that, we need to go back to our first trunk and notice something strange. I bet you didn't see it. We've seen many trunks, but Devil's Tower was unique. It has a flat surface at the top, which means the tree was cut. Yes, exactly, cut or sawed off. Now our imagination asks us, who cut it? And why? And with what did they cut it? Let's set these questions aside for now. I'll answer them later. Devil's Tower, which we've seen, is not the only one on Earth. It is a small stump compared to other trunks. Let's go. The plane is ready for takeoff. Of course, we won't have a specific route, but we'll roam the Earth. Fasten your seatbelts, and you'd better hold on tight because everything you're about to see will turn your concept of rocks and mountains upside down. As we fly, let's play a game. Find 10 differences between each pair of images, even though there are only 2, material and size. These trunks are everywhere on Earth, and there are hundreds of them. Scientists call them mesas, which means table in Spanish, because they have flat tops like a table. Aren't these trunks magnificent? Now let's return to the beginning of our discussion. We thought we had seen forests and walked through them, but does it matter if their trees are only 30 meters tall? Is there a difference? We are content with the trees that remain to us, we enjoy their beauty, and we've grown accustomed to these forests. Therefore, we don't feel the need for anything else. But we've discovered that the ancient trees have been preserved in the United States, as if they are the very trees we've read about in fairy tales and legends. So, let's cling tightly to the matrix perspective when looking at the sequoia tree in California, or else we might lose our minds, for although Devil's Tower is the stump of a tree that was 6 kilometers tall, it's a small sapling compared to other trees. For example, the plateau in Cape Town, South Africa, is truly astonishing. It has a diameter of 3 kilometers, and if we multiply 3 by 20, we get a tree with a height of 60 kilometers. Can you imagine the size of its branches? On one of these branches, we could easily establish a massive residential area, with shopping malls, schools, and parks. Imagine how enormous it is. But of course, your mind will never see that this mountain in Africa is actually a tree 10 times taller than Devil's Tower, 60 kilometers high. Even more fascinating is that this is not the ultimate height. In the writings of the Russian scientist and poet Alexander Pushkin, we can read about a giant imaginary oak tree that once existed on an island, and we believe our government killed it at some point. This oak tree was supposed to be the center of the Earth, with a height of several hundred kilometers. I'm not sure of its exact height, but it was certainly taller than the one that once stood in Cape Town. This tree was the largest plant on Earth. Remember that I mentioned at the beginning how the perspective of our mind helps preserve itself but distorts the truth. Ask anyone to choose the correct image of a tree between these two, and they'll immediately point to the green one on the grass, without noticing that it's just a pathetic shrub, closer to moss compared to the real tree. And that certainly isn't a forest. Do you now understand why we can't find the 9 dolphins? But don't trouble your mind with fish and stumps. Again, I'm just encouraging you to think on a grander scale. If, instead of dolphins and stumps, we see lovers and mountains, imagine what is hidden from us behind the curtain. That's why the concept of the apocalypse translates to the unveiling. Do you now realize why I pointed out the matrix perspective at the beginning, the one through which we view the world, only to find that we see nothing at all? The real world is different from what we perceive, and I can say that our society today is living in a true dream. But the sad part is that this statement is not a metaphor. Did you know that the phrase ancient tree in Russian, the Aryan language, consists of the syllables dereva, and the phrase ancient times consists of the syllables derevnost, meaning the time when giant ancient trees grew? Interesting, isn't it? Alright, let's set that aside and continue our journey. I believe you're about to ask me, perhaps because it's time to return to the questions. Who cut down these trees? Why were they cut? And with what were they cut? No, it's still too early to ask such questions.